Hey guys, Darren Carr here, coach of Wise Ocean Pods, and welcome back to another episode of our round preview series. On today's episode, we will be previewing round 12, which is the first week of the mid-season bye. So exciting times, especially for teams like mine that aren't really fighting for overall rank, for a hat or a car or anything like that. So, um, yeah, definitely an interesting time as there's a lot of different strategy that you can approach the buys. And I personally just love the buys at this time of the year. Just adds such a different element to the game. You can so many different strategies to just as a brief summary, you can go 3 down or you can go 2-1, 2 down, 1 up. And there's just so many different structures around how everything's set out. So definitely an interesting time and my favourite time of the year. So, but there's going to be a bit of a different episode this week. There's so much to talk about in my notes here. So it's going to be a bit of a reduced sort of section in terms of the trade-in, trade-out targets. It's really hard this time of year to sort of provide that information for all you fans, just because it's really team dependent. Like, at the end of the day, my team's very different to yours. You may be heavy in one line more than I am heavy in a certain line. So my trades will be completely different to yours and vice versa, you know? So it's really hard to sort of provide a general sort of advice on these trade and trade out targets, but I'll try and do my best and try and provide, multiple different scenarios in terms of what I'd be doing. So we'll quickly just look at the trade out targets here. As we all know around here, I get straight to the bullshit. I don't really muck around too much, so straight into it. Tom Powell is number 1 traded out this week, and I've been pretty heavy against not trading him out just because, again, the forward line is just absolutely shit. I'm looking through the top 6, and he's still the top 6 of the forwards, and he's just outside that in my rankings at this point in time. So I think I'm fine with that. He has the best role of the lot, and I like his run coming up. I can probably even just show you here real quick. Where's North Melbourne? So quickly here, he's got West Coast after bye. Collingwood has been a pretty easy matchup when the likes of when the normal mixes in there, whether they're in there or not is probably one to discuss. A couple of neutral matchups, a couple of tougher ones there, but then after that, so I'm probably just going to look to hold him for the year, honestly, unless his role starts to change or something like that. Then I'm perfectly fine holding him. In saying that, the way my season has turned out and the way my forward line is at the moment, maybe I wouldn't take my advice on that, but I that's just the way I feel about him personally. I really like his role. He's showing the scoring potential. He just hasn't hit those sort of ceilings in the last couple, maybe even last month and a half. Like, look at the first month, couple over 100 there. Just hasn't dropped below 70, but also hasn't got above 90. So just really consistent around that area. It's just not quite enough to make people happy, I guess. And obviously it's his buy, so it's sort of the perfect time to move off of him. The only scenario that I'm actually okay with you moving off of him is if you're heavy in the round 12 buy. So when I say heavy, I'm talking in terms of primo. So I classify being heavy in round 12 as if you have 6 primos. So let's just rattle off some primos here in round 12. So you got Sheasel, who's probably number 1, who everyone pretty much has. Whitfield, who's also very highly owned in the back line. So that's already 2 on the back line. Let's move on to the midfield. You got Green and you got Goulden, who I think are quite highly owned. Green especially. And Goulden's getting up there as well. I think he's around 20% owned. So if you have those guys, that's definitely something you consider. Then you got in the forward line as well, you got Heaney and you got Powell. And you've got a Zorko as well. So if you have Zorko in Heaney, 100% get rid of Power. 3 on one line is just way too many, and I think that's an obvious no-brainer, obviously. So, but if you've got 6 primos, I'd also consider moving him off. That's the only scenario I would sort of look to trade him out, because then at least you're trying to provide 22 on field, whereas with 6 primos, you're going to struggle to get there. Especially because you have 2 in each line, which 2 in each line is perfectly fine, right? Like, that's sort of the max you want, but yeah, you're really going to struggle to get to that, 21, 22 on field. And at the end of the day, he's not quite hitting those lines where he's going to be top 6. He's close, but with the way he's sort of tracking, if he continues with his score, he's going to be probably well outside of that. I'm sort of backing him in, hoping he can, get back to some of this form, given that the role looks pretty cemented recently. Would like to see a few more CBAs, but like, what we saw at the start of the season where it was, nearly 80%. He's dropped down to, 60, 50%. Would like to see them get back up, but I just don't see how I don't think that's going to fruition, especially with the likes of Sheasel getting a lot more of the ball, a lot more inside time, and especially with even Simcom coming back in. What does he do? Does he play this 30% role? Who does that affect then? It definitely could possibly affect Powell, and that's something I'll probably need to evaluate at some point. So it's definitely a strategy, definitely a trade out if you are backing him into sort of his role's going to change with the likes of Simcom coming back in, and you're backing that Sheasel's going to continue this role in the mids. It hasn't really worked for them in my eyes. Like, they still got thumped over the weekend, and Sheasel, I don't see him as an inside ball. He's not really that sort of player, but I think he could get there with a lot of time and practice and whatnot. We've seen the likes of similar stature. I'll make the comparison to Will Day in my eyes. Like, Will Day probably took a few more years because he was coming off the halfback. He's very slim, had a few more injuries than the likes of Sheasel in that time frame. But I definitely think he can be an inside mid. It's just, I think it's going to take a few more years. So I don't know how that's going to affect his role. Whether they just throw him in the guts and leave him there and he'll just, learn over the time, or they're going to throw it week to week and, you're going to see these likes of 30% CBAs or 50% or even 0, and he goes to the halfback or goes forward, something like that. So I definitely see the appeal of jumping off at the likes of Tom Powell, just given that the uncertainty around his role. So, but I'm just backing him. Hopefully he can become that player that we know he can be. That's probably enough on Powell. What I spend fucking 5 minutes talking about him already. Jesus. Number 2 on this list is who coaches are trading at is 6.6 Cav coaches are trading at is Joe Richards. Really unlucky with this one. Obviously, he was sort of the most traded in target for this week, given he has a negative 21 break even, 376k, but he has now been ruled out for, I believe, what is it? Let's have a quick look here. I think it was 5 to 6 weeks. Where is he? Joe Richards with a foot, yeah. So I think he has a fractured foot, 5 to 6 weeks. So he's out until after the buyers. So that just makes him a red dot throughout the buyers, and you just need to move him on. You'll see a pretty common theme across sort of the most traded out players, which would just be red dot rookies, and that's absolutely the best play in my opinion. Get rid of the red dots. So you got Hugo Garcia, 5.9k coaches are trading him out. Will Graham, 4.8k coaches. Blake Howes, 4.7k. Then you've got then you got a round 12 rookie in Harvey Thomas, 4.1k coaches trading out. Great option as well, especially if you're heavy in that sort of buy, or I think it's just time for him to go anyway. Then you've got an interesting one with Lockie Whitfield. So 4.1k coaches are trading out Lockie Whitfield. And it's typically not something that I would even look at. Like, given he's a primo, we expect he's going to be, top 6 of his line. He started the year on fire. Like, he didn't drop below 100 until round 6. And even then it was a 90. He has since gone, round 8, he got a 48 where he got tagged by Jordan, who obviously put a pretty heavy tag on him, just didn't let him get any of that distribution ball. Then he came up around 9 against Guelphy, who also put a bit of attention into him, dropped into a 77. He's since gone 100 against Western Bulldogs and 90 against the Cats. So returning to form slightly, just hasn't seen sort of the stealing scores that we sort of expect. And his run coming up isn't great either. So he's got Hawks in round 13, which, yeah, it's not too bad, I don't think. So let's just say designated kickouts. Looking at Hawthorn here, they are apparently a super easy matchup. So that's probably one that you could pencil in is going to be pretty good. It's just they may put a bit of attention in. We saw the likes of Zorko on the weekend just gone, scoring 80. Which is well under what we sort of expected from him. Just giving a bit not Hawthorn sort of tagging him. I think it's just being aware where he is, not allowing him to get too much of the distribution ball. So It's just something to note there that he may get some attention in that game. Then he's got Port Adelaide, who also are a very tough matchup. We've seen the likes of McEntee do... So, Jed McEntee? Yeah, I think it's that one. Do a bit of attention on halfbackers. I personally seen it in real time where, when Hawthorn and Port were playing against each other, he was putting a bit of attention into a Josh Weddle. And Josh Weddle's not even like a super damaging halfback. So I reckon that's probably guaranteed that he's going to get a bit of attention there. Then he comes up against James Jordan again. So that's a red flag in itself where he's only scored 48 last time. So I definitely do see the appeal of trading him out for, at least for the next 3 weeks, or you're just sort of backing him in to get a bit more of attention, and he's going to drop more on coin. At the end of the day, he's not probably going to drop too much more unless he really puts up some stinkers. I don't know why that... Something's going on my computer at the moment. It just seems to refresh my screen every so often. But yes, yeah, I don't mind trading him out at the end of the day. He doesn't have a huge amount of money on his head. Like, he's dropped below 800k. We've seen him up the likes of 950k, I think, so far. So he's now under the price that we paid for him at the start of the season. I'm thinking that I just want to hold him. I'm pretty light on in round 12 anyway, so I think he's probably one I'll be holding on to. Dusty Jones, similar to Harvey Thomas, he is injured, so he is out for a little while. So he's perfectly time to move on. He's a red dot, and he's a buy player. So he is definitely one that needs to go. He's a hamstring, so he's done for 5 to 7 weeks still. So he's perfect one to move on. A couple more here. Harry Sheezel, people moving on Harry Sheezel. I am against this move. I know I traded at him a couple weeks ago, but that was when he wasn't getting, 88% time in the CBAs where he does have access to points. That was when, he was getting 14 and 45% CBAs. So I was definitely a bit more bullish on trading him out then. In saying that, it has sort of worked out for me. Sheezel's dropped maybe 80k since then, I think, around that price. And, Luke Ryan, who I did trade in for him, has gone up nearly 100k, I think, around that price. So has worked out in terms of price rises and scoring output, but I still don't think... I still think Sheezel in this role that he currently has definitely is going to be a top 6 defender for sure. So I personally just be holding on to him. Tom Green is another interesting one. He just looks crap. He looks bad. I don't know what's going on with him at the moment. He just doesn't look like the man that we all, like a lot of people started with, where he was, the highest averaging player so far. He has just gone really shocking since then, and doesn't look like he's getting any of the outside ball. So that's the worrying thing. The only thing that maybe is the saving grace for him, coming up, is that, and something that I wanted to talk about a bit later, was the rule change that has come through from the AFL, this week. So to sort of fast forward to that and talk about that real quickly, the AFL come out and said that they're going to be tightening up on one of the rules for the AFL, and that is the holding the ball rule. So the umpires have been instructed that they're going to slightly adjust the time that you need to dispose of the ball. So that could mean that, expect these people that tackle quite heavily. Iconically, you're talking Rao, you got Steele, Green on his day can definitely tackle. I'm struggling to think who else. Maybe even a Cherry, who also tackles quite heavily, just looking at names here. They may be awarded holding the ball quite a bit more often. So that definitely could lead them to a few more points. So that's maybe his only saving grace for why I'd probably look to hold him. I also think he's sort of bottomed out in price now, and everyone's sort of could jump on him next week anyway. So there's no real point for me to be advising people to trade him out when a lot of people are just going to jump on him next week. So I'd personally be holding him and just backing him in to sort of return to a bit of form, with it, have a week off. Hopefully he gets, back to being a bit fit. And hopefully he can just get back to being the Tom Green that we all know and we expect him to be a fantasy, I wouldn't say fantasy god, but, elite fantasy scorer for many years to come. Again, he's only 23. He's still got probably 3 or 4 years off into his prime, so he's got a lot of growth. Caleb Windsor needs to go. Jack McRae is another one that has been a thorn in my side, particularly 58 on the weekend. Hasn't looked any good, not getting any CBAs anymore, even with the likes of, Ed Richards going down on the weekend, quite early on. He still had 0% CBAs, so we saw the likes of Sanders coming as a sub, and he sort of just replaced him instantly in that CBAs. So Richards only had 31%, and Sanders came in, and we saw the likes of, a very mixed bag of Harms, Garcia, and West have a couple CBAs, even a couple more here. Darcy doesn't really count. So that is just really frustrating as an owner, that you've got a natural ball winner that has, made a career of being an inside ball, getting those distribution balls, and, being an in and under player, and you're not playing him in his position. So I don't know what Bevo's doing. He is just a big thorn on my side, and I cannot wait until he is sacked, because Jack McRae is going to be so cheap, and I can only assume, if I was a coach, it would be so easy to be like, this guy's made a career out of this, and, we've seen some of the best football that they've played with him in there. You throw him instantly back in, he's going to be so cheap for us, and especially with forward status. So the sooner Bevo gets sacked in my eyes, the better Jack McRae will be. But in terms of right now, that's not going to happen. So what do we do with Jack McRae? He's probably one that you could look at trading out very shortly. I'm personally probably just thinking to holding to his buy. I know it's probably a bit of a longer hold than you want, given it is 3 weeks. If he's your worst player, and he's dropping coin, and he's a player that gets you up to someone that you're really looking for, then I'd support it. But I'm just looking at the forward line thinking, who else are you going to? There's not a whole lot of options up there. So I'll just quickly rattle off my top 6 forwards so far. So Dane Zorka's obviously number 1. You got Heaney probably number 2, and you got Flanders very close at number 3. So they're pretty obvious answers up top. We all know that. Then I've got Fisher at number 4. He's slotted in there after the last month of footy, obviously averaging well over 100 in that at the moment. I've sort of got Ryan Myers at number 5, just given how consistent he has been. He's pretty consistent to be sort of a 80 guy to maybe 100. Been very well consistent besides the game on the weekend. Then number 6 is where the tricky spot is. You've got, looking at the most average there, you got Caldwell, who's averaging 85. What's his role going to be? Is that going to be consistent? Especially while Parrish is out, I don't mind it. You got Brad Hill's also around there, but he's dropping, he's going, his last, 5, he's gone 59, 103, 65, 109, then 50. So he's just very up and down. Like, it's not consistent, and he's very inflated with that 150 that he's had there. You've got a couple key forwards in Mackay, Joe Danaher, Waterman. Then you come the likes of some Richmond boys. You got Baker, that's also there, and you got Bolton, who's just quickly is also out for an extended period of time, I believe. So we have a quick look at that. Richmond, there we are. Where is Bolton? Bolton, concussion 1 week, so only 1 week. So maybe here's an option we can look at later, but definitely not this week. So it's really tricky to try and determine who our top 6 forwards are, and at the end of the day, if he can average 80, which is what I sort of expected from him, but which is what he was doing prior to last week, and we've got to keep in mind that Sydney are the most informed team of the competition, and they're absolutely flying at the moment. So it's not so to say it's unexpected that McRae went terribly. Yeah, it's just I'm hoping he can bounce back and provide, back to those 70s to 80s and maybe even push 90s just until he's by, and then, I can reassess from there. So that's just my point of view. I don't think we can expect, 50s again. Hopefully not. Hopefully. Fingers crossed for that one. Even if we just quickly look at, say he's a general forward because he's not getting any CBA usage. He's got Collingwood, then you got Brisbane, then you got Freo. So not a great run either. So I don't mind you moving off of him, but I'm thinking I'm just going to back him in. Jordan Sweet is definitely one that needs to go. He is burning a hole in your R3, 541k on your bench. Fuck me, stop doing that. Yeah, where are we? Sorry guys. He's burning a hole in your R3, 541k on your bench is just a dumb move. So he is one that I'd absolutely be trading at, and he is in my trade plans, and you can already see he's actually out of my team. So he's already one trade I've locked out instantly. He just needs to go. And he has been a shocking pick. He has pretty much solely destroyed my season. To think that I was ranked around 2k when I traded him in, and now I'm ranked 14k. So that's just the Jordan Sweet factor. But that's what I get, I guess. Yeah, so he's obviously a trade out. I think, yeah, doesn't help your buy structure in terms of... It would have been nice to have him as a cover ruck this week if, you know, you had Cherry or Grundy. But for me personally, I think he was always going just because I have Marshall and English who are both playing this week. So having, you know, he's not providing anything on my bench. Cherry, people are moving on Cherry after his big score last week, which is an interesting move in my eyes, just given that he's been way better than what I could have ever expected from the start of the season. It's a big regret that I sort of had not starting him and not jumping on him quite early on. But I do see probably the appeal why people are moving off. Just looking at his run, his next after his bye, he's got quite a heavy bad run. So I don't mind it. It's just who are you jumping to? Are you jumping to a Grundy? Are you jumping to a Gorn? Are you jumping to an English? Probably not. It's just one of those two guys, and obviously a very similar price. I think both are just over $1 million. So it's trying to just make the best judgment there. Even, you know, looking at St Kilda's run from Rucks is also very hard there. Whereas if you look at a Gorns, I reckon is a bit easier until after the buys. After the buys for Marshall isn't too appetizing either. So it's a really tough call. You're probably not going to get a big sugar hit either way. Maybe against this week against Freo, we did see the likes of Darcy Cameron go 117 against them. So not too bad there. So I can support the move. A couple more here. We've already spent 22 minutes on trade out targets. So Closely, I don't mind as well being traded out, just if he can get you to the player that you're looking for. I've definitely played with that option myself. And that's probably where we'll finish it off. Everyone else is sort of pretty, needs to go at the end of the day. Quickly looking at the trade in targets. So McAuliffe, absolutely, he's my number one. Joel Frazier is my number two, so that's pretty straightforward. I think they're the most easy to grab rookies this week. I think the job security is going to be pretty good, and they're going to make some decent coin. Both have around 15 buys, so that's awesome as well. Harvey Thomas is probably my number three. Why does it do that? Oh, sorry guys, this is really frustrating. I don't know what's going on at the moment. Harvey Thomas is definitely my number three. Under 300k. Put up a 88 on the weekend. It's just we need to see him play full games. That's all we need to expect from him. And I hope that is going to be the case, given that they've now just lost what's his name, Richards, who was playing pretty consistently in their what's his name? Let's quickly look at their interest here. My check's now out for another 2 to 4 weeks, so expect him to be gone for a while. Hoskin Elliott's still out for another week. Obviously, you got the midfield boys and DeGoey and Mitchell that's still out. And yeah, they're just really depleted. Even got a Mason Cox who's been ruled out for 6 weeks as well. So there's a lot of injuries here, and it does leave a lot of availability for him to play some games. So hopefully that just means he's going to be starting on the field, and he doesn't start as a sub. We will know on, I think he plays Thursday night or Friday night, so we will be able to tell that one. So if he does start at the sub, maybe we can just make the adjustment there and go to someone else who we will mention a bit later. Will Day, I do like him as an option. Obviously, I said in my review series that I was actually targeting him, and that's partly still the case. I definitely like it as an option, but I think I've made some better trades through some of the development. Just looking at his particular run, I think he can provide you with probably a decent stretch of, what is it here? I'd say until Geelong at least, so round 17. So hold him throughout that period. You're going to get some decent games out of him, especially with this green run. And he can probably equal, the likes of those, round top 10 midfielders for a fair bit. We know how his fantasy game can be quite good, especially another year in his system. I think he's now 23, I believe. 22, so he's still very young, quite off his prime. Good break even. Round 15 buy is handy, especially for those, if you're not super heavy in that buy. I know a lot of us have the likes of, a lot of people have Dawson, Bont, Steele. So if it works for your buy, then I definitely would like it. I definitely support it. But if you are heavy with that one, I definitely probably wouldn't look at it. But he's probably my number one pick out of those sort of mid 600 to 800k price guys. Boak is one that has popped up again this week, just given that hit now that he has forward status. And I don't mind it. Like, I have come around a little bit. He's still a little bit lower down on my list, just given that I'm not super supportive of his role. He's more playing of a winger role that sort of floats back quite heavily. I would love it if he went into sort of this halfback role and he became a bit more of a distributor, like a Zorko sort of doing, because he is quite a good kick, and I definitely think that's more suited to his sort of game style. But just with the wing role, I'm just not super supportive. But in saying that, he does have the nice buy, does have forward status, so that's probably the one area that a lot of us are struggling with not having around 13 forward. Like I currently have Nat 5, but I think he'll be going for me this week, and I recommend that for everyone as well. But maybe you're looking for him over the next sort of 3 weeks. If let's have a quick look at his wing scale. Port, so you got Carlton this week, who are a tough matchup. We saw the likes of Closey put up a 68 on the weekend, so he could probably put up around that area. Then you got GWS and then Brisbane before he goes on a decent, like a pretty neutral run. So nothing that screams out to me, pick me in the end of the day. So I'm personally just staying away from him, even though he is a decent price and could provide a bit of a punt. Jordan Ridley, I'm personally waiting one more week or even till after his buys, just given my buy structure. I do like him as a prospect. Just given, the role change, that's always something that we're looking for in terms of, these underpriced guys. It will suck because, but if he keeps going at this rate, by the time it hits after his buy, he's going to be probably 150k. So it's not going to be super light on at the end of the day, but I really like his option in terms of, we've now got, is it Ben Mackay? I can't remember which one it is. I think it's Ben Mackay. I can't remember. One of the Mackay brothers is now back there, and it's freeing Ridley up a lot. So he's going to get a lot more of intercept possessions. I made the reference that he reminds me of a James Sicily when he's a bit more freed up. So I definitely like him a lot, and I just want to see the role once again, given it's not against Richmond, who are the easiest the team to score against. So definitely the next 2 weeks will be plenty to guide for me to gauge on that. But I don't mind you jumping on early. I definitely think he is gonna probably average higher than what he was priced at anyway. Like maybe not 130s, but I definitely think he can probably break 90, 95 sort of areas. A couple more here. Sexton is still my number one target this week. If you didn't jump on him last week, I still think he is a great option. Who was next? Sorry guys, I don't know what's going on. This is annoying. Don't know if it's a website or if it's me, but none of my other fucking websites are reloading like this, so it must be this website currently. Joe Richards, people are still trading him in. I absolutely would not. I think it's just people not reversing trade just yet. Jack Crisp is my number 2 for these sort of mid table prices, just given that his role's probably going to be pretty consistent for the next sort of 4 weeks with the likes of, Tom Mitchell out and, what's his name? DeGoey. So I don't mind him as he's under 800k. He can provide some decent scores for you over that time period. And there's no guarantee that, the likes of Mitchell push him out because they actually look pretty dangerous with him in there. So fingers crossed for those owners that have jumped on that he stays there and, he's scoring quite well. So the run is pretty decent as well. I've been looking at Dacos's run because I'm targeting him this week and it's pretty neutral. It's pretty neutral all throughout there, and then even after the buys, has a couple harder ones, and then goes on a pretty decent run there. So I definitely don't mind it. So I definitely recommend him. Just again, make sure it fits your buy structure. Salem is probably the last on my list of the top 5 of these medium prices because the biggest red flag for me is that he has put up 2 big scores against very easy matchup. So you got St Kilda, who is the easiest matchup for defenders. Where was I up to? So I was in. So it was St Kilda put 133 against, and then he put up a 93 against West Coast Eagles, who aren't a super easy matchup in terms of defenders, but West Coast give up points on the day, especially if they're not playing at home. So it's just a flag for me. So I just wouldn't jump on. You've seen this trap before. Look at these first 3 games from the start of the year and then look what he did after that. So I think he's just a bit more of a trap and I'm just personally staying away. It doesn't also suit my buy. So I'm just not looking at it at all. Jordan Dawson is my number 3 trade-in target for if you're looking to pay up for somebody. I just really like his run. The role is a little bit concerning, but I think he's just a decent fantasy. He's an elite fantasy player. He can score anywhere on the ground. Hawthorn this week, so I definitely think he's a captain option as well. So I definitely don't mind him there. Luke Ryan, my boy, I like him as well. Got Melbourne this week, so I'm not sure it's going to be super, inducive to high scoring. He scored a 102 against them last year, but it's also at Alice Springs, so this is their 1 game in Alice Springs this year, so that hasn't shown super high ceiling scores for many players there, so probably not expecting anything huge from him quite yet. In saying that, I am actually considering putting the C on him. Very similar to Max, they're playing the same game, so I'm tossing up between these 2 in my C options there. Speaking of Max, I do think he's a good option if you're jumping off a cherry or you're jumping off, someone that, around 12 Ruckman, whether that's Grundy or Cherry or even someone else. I do think he is a pretty good option. He's now bottomed out in price and he will start going up again, or he's going to. This is about what you should expect to pay for him. He's not probably going to drop too much below a mil at any stage this year. He can just put up these massive scores and provide a good captain option for you. So I think he's just one to jump a hold of. Even looking at his run quickly for Ruckman, like we saw, he's up against Fremantle this week, where I said Darcy Cameron went 117 against them. So that's obviously, I would say Max Gawn's in a different category to Darcy Cameron, but I would expect a decent score there. And then he's got Darcy Cameron next week, who is solo rucking at the moment and is a very interesting prospect at the moment, given we haven't seen the likes of Darcy Cameron be solo ruck for quite some time. So I'll get into that a little bit later when we go into my captain options. Nick Dacos is also on my list of main trading targets. If you're looking to pay up, he's number 4. Jordan Clark is a interesting one because obviously he's been doing great. He's sort of hit the floodgates since going over 100, and he's now gone 130 in the last 2. So he's been great. Again, just comes up against Melbourne this week, who are a neutral matchup, but at Alice Springs, who really knows? We did see the likes of Salem go 133 against Melbourne last week, but again, that was at I think that was at Marvel, or the MCG, something like that. So yeah, I'm still a little bit scared off, and I'm not 100% sure he makes top 6 defender, so I'm just not looking there, unfortunately. Similar to Max Holmes, he has been absolutely killing it the last 4 weeks, so I definitely don't mind it. I wish I did it at the start of the year. He would have been a great pick, and yeah, has it only jumped? His lowest score is 81, which is ridiculous. So he's been super consistent. It's just whether I see him as a top 6 defender now or not. When I look at the top 6 defenders, who am I looking at? So just going by average, you're not looking at Ridley. He's averaging the most at the moment, given his one game. But you got Sheasel at number 1. You've got... So I'll try and list them in order of who I think is going to be averaging the most for the rest of the year. So you got Nick Dacos, I reckon, will be number 1. It's tough, isn't it? So probably got Luke Ryan there as well. Sheasel's probably up there. Nick Martin's an interesting one with his new role, whether he's going forward a bit more. He's lost his kick out, so I probably wouldn't put him as high, but he's probably still sneaks in at number 4. Hayden Young's probably around there as well, and then you're probably tossing up between Wangani Malera or Whitfield, who's also there, but Max Holmes right in the mix there at 99.3%. So it's definitely an interesting punt you could take. It's just so expensive now, like 877k. It's probably not one I'm willing to pay for, given the uncertainty around it. People are jumping on Will Parker, just given the injuries at the Pies. Don't mind it, especially if you're looking for a defender. Just would like to see him get a bit more game time. Sorry. We'll quickly end this. So, what did he do on the weekend? He had 36% time on ground for 66 points. So, hopefully he can get a full game and then provide some decent option for us. So I would love to jump on him next week, or I actually don't even mind jumping on him this week if it's something that I need to do. Maybe it opens up my trades a little bit more. I'll have to wait and see what teams and see if he's named sub. If he's not named sub, then I may even jump on him myself. He may not make the most coin this week, but I realistically don't want to be jumping on him next week, because at the end of the day we want to be jumping on players in round 12. So it's definitely an option I need to look at. Maybe better than a Harvey Thomas. Roll Marshall, like I said, I get like Max Gorn. I really like him as an option. Sullivan is another one that is probably worth jumping on as well, given the injuries there. So he could make some decent coin, but he is a bit more pricey. So make do with that with you will. Nick Hind, I just haven't looked at this. I don't like these players that are just like mixer fix-its. I think he relied a lot on the goals he kicked in this game. He kicked, 2 or 3? 2 goals, 19 disposals, 19 kicks, 6 handballs, 5 marks. So, but he can easily drop a bloody 50 on your head next week. So I'm just not even looking at it. Again, doesn't suit my buy. Zach Merritt doesn't make my most traded in list just because I'm not super happy about his role, especially as an owner. He's got like 90% CBAs, but he doesn't float to the stoppages like around the ground. He's sort of letting these outside guys doing a bit more of that inside role around there, and he's sort of floating in the inside, hoping to be a bit more of a transition guy, trying to get some +6s, but he's not a marking prowess guy. So as long as someone's standing on him, he's not getting those marks. He really needs to work hard to spread. I'd personally probably rather him play off halfback a little bit more and get those +6s rather than the role he's in. So I just wouldn't recommend it for other people at the moment. And the run isn't great either until after his bye. So I'd reassess when his bye, so round 14, because his run after his bye is pretty damn good. Let's have a quick look here. Who's he play for? Essendon. So West Coast Geelong, then, pretty good from there. So I'd just reassess from there, honestly. And I think that's where I'll sort of finish it off. Kind of just some no names there. Maybe Caleb Sarong and Sam Walsh. I really like Caleb Sarong. He is my number 2. For obvious reasons. His bye is really nice next week, and especially if you don't have the likes of a Butters or a Brayshaw or any of those round 13 sort of mids. I think you definitely need one of them just to make your buys a bit more structurally sound for the rest of the season. And Sammy Walsh is a bit more expensive, and I'm looking at him particularly after his bye. I probably wouldn't trade him in this week, given that it is Port Adelaide and it's a tough matchup. these next two matches are quite tough for inside mid. So I'm personally not looking at that, but look at the run after his bye. Geelong, Richmond, harder one there, a couple of easy ones, and then you'll be pretty good to the end of the year. So that's where I'm looking at picking him up. So that will sort of do it for the trade in and trade out targets. Just quickly to summarize, I'll bring my pop-ups here. So main trade out targets, I've got red dot rookies. Pretty shithousery, but I think that's just a general assumption that a lot of people have red dots, especially in the rookie department and on the benches. So I think they need to go just to structure up for your buys. That's a pretty no-brainer. Next, I've got round 12 rookies. So that's the likes of Harvey Thomas. You got Darcy Jones there, and a couple others that are worth going on. Toby Pink for like myself. I think they all need to possibly be moving depending on how you're structured up for the buys. Number 3, I have Nat 5. He's just dropping coin. He's been scoring less than a rookie. So I think he just needs to go, unfortunately. I would have loved to hold him to his bye, which is only one more week, but he's been averaging 40 in the last 4, so that's just shocking. Trade him out while he has some money on his head and get up to a decent player. Jordan Sweet, who is already out of my side, definitely needs to go as well. Makes my number 4. Not playing this week, been dropped, so he probably won't come back. And 450k or 540k needs to be moved off of your bench. And number 5, I had Closey here, just given that, maybe you're looking at someone, you may need a bit of money to trade up to, that top line guy. Maybe you're not comfortable with the likes of Day, Chris, Boak, Ridley, or Salem, and you want to get up to that next top line guy. So, that 600k that's on Closey's head, it's worth trading him out at the end of the day, because most of us will be trading him out either next week or the week after that for sure. So jump early. I definitely don't mind that as an option. Now we'll move into the main trade-in target. So I still have Sexton there at number 1. He's still going to make a bunch of coin from here. He's got a break-even of 34. And I still think he'll score better than what he did on the weekend, given that, it was a harder matchup, I thought. So hopefully he does a bit better this weekend. Have a quick look at his kickouts. Did he take many kickouts? It's probably one thing I need to look at. He should have. Essendon this week, but then St Kilda next week. So, and even looking after that as well, Freo and Collingwood. So, definitely not mind him. I think he will be pretty decent. Can I look at his kick-ins? Did he take kick-ins? 1 second, guys. Yeah, he took 5. So 5, and a few others took a couple others. So nothing to be concerned there. I'd say that's just when he's on his bench, there would have been a couple kick-ins, and they just need to take it. So he's still the main kick-in taker, or second after Flanders comes back. So I still think he's a great option. Number 2, I had Caleb Sarong. So like I said before, you need someone in that midfield from that bye. So I already have Butters, so that's probably one of the reasons I haven't picked up Strong just yet, even though I do really like him. I also expect he's going to do pretty well again this week. We saw the likes of Steele go 122 against Melbourne last week, and I think maybe Alice Springs maybe suits him a little bit better. Just he may get more points for his tackles, because he is quite ferocious in his tackling, but he's also really good at spreading and getting those marks. So he's definitely one I'd recommend jumping on if you're looking in that range. Number 3, I had Jordan Dawson. So obviously we're seeing how good he's been over the last forever. He's just been going well over at 110 for a long time. He's got Hawthorn this week and then Tigers next week after, so he could put up some very big scores and is a very good captain option. So if you're I'd look at jumping on him. Number 4, I had Nick Dacos. Going up in price, so he's breaking even to 90. Got a pretty good run coming up, as we saw before. 3 neutral matchups, and even after the bye, I think he's just a hold for the year, and is particularly for a lot of teams, you won't have a defender in your round 15. So that's something I've identified in my team. I don't have a round 15 defender. So you may have a likes of a Wangani Malira, a Sinclair, or I'm trying to think who it was now. There's a couple others there as well, but it's very unlikely that you're running more than 2. So I think he's definitely one that you need to pick up. I think most people have him anyway. He's 6% owned, so it's probably selfish that I put him in here, to be honestly. And number 5, I had Max Gawn. Just he's bottomed out in price. I think he's going to put up some pretty decent ceiling scores, and anyone that hasn't started him definitely is hurting, and it's time to jump on him if you can. The downgrade options really quickly here. So we had Kane McAuliffe as my number 1. I think his role is really good. He's got the most easy matchup this week, so it's going to be a bit of sugar hit and going to make a lot of money. So that's pretty much a no-brainer, as long as he's named, of course. This is all caveat with that. Joel Frazier, bit more expensive, but looked really good. He's been thrown around a little bit in terms of his role. I think he was playing a bit more of a halfback in the first half of last week's game, but then went forward as they were trying to win the game. So they do see a bit of a prospect in him to play a different role. So I think that means he's got some decent job security. So I definitely don't mind him. Harvey Harris is my number 3. Just sort of banking on that, they've got so many injuries. He should play some more full games, and hopefully we can see a few more games that are going to be, inducive to this type of scoring. I don't think 3 goals and 9 tackles is sustainable, but I'm hoping he can, push 50s, if not 60s. The only other full game he's played is a 44, so not quite what we want to see, and that was kicking a goal as well. So, but I think just given his price range, he's probably one of the better options to grab. One person I didn't name on here was Will Parker. I didn't really consider that until, as I was making this video, honestly. But yeah, I don't mind him. Jed McEntee is my number 4. Just, it's one I've been playing around with, because you look at his scores, they haven't been great. Like, he's played 3 full games, and he's gone 34, 40, and 65. So nothing amazing, and he is priced at 300k, break even at 8. So he will go up in coin. He's got a tough matchup this week, but it also is, the buy factor. He's a forward. He's got the round 13 buy, so it could help you with your structure a little bit, and you could you pretty much bank that he's going to be playing each and every week. I don't see him being dropped out of the side. Like, he's been dropped a couple of times, but there is definitely a flag that he could be the sub. So take that as you will. And number 5, I had Lockie Sullivan, who's way down here. Lower break even of 11, so not going to make a huge amount of coin, but hopefully gets a bit more of a role at Collingwood now that, the likes of Pendlebury's even out. So he should get a lot more time in there, because that opens up 77%, so that should mean likes of Sullivan gets a bit more time, and even Josh Dacos gets more time in there. So interesting times at the Collingwood. So whether they turn to the kids and go Sullivan, or whether they turn to a Dacos, or they go to a Lipinski, who has done a bit of CBA work in there previously, whether they go to side bottom, there's definitely different options. So I don't mind him as sort of banking. It's just a bit more pricey in my eyes. And that sort of does it for the trade-in and trade-out targets. Now let's move on to a bit of strategy chat that I want to talk about. So there's been a couple of things in the media at the moment. So one thing I wanted to quickly touch on was that we just went through the mid-season draft. So last night, Wednesday, 29th of May, we had the mid-season draft, and a couple players that I just wanted to quickly mention that probably should make your watch list as such. So just rolling through here, so we had North Melbourne pick up Geordie Payne. So he's a mid-forward player from Tasmania, 19, 184 centimetres. Probably one I'm not expecting to instantly come straight into their side, just given, the likes of they've got a pretty solid team at this kind of time. They're backing in a fair few players, but it's just something to mention. Like this, you want to try and look at their previous history of their scoring, like where they're scoring in the VFL or wherever they're playing. He averages about 78, I believe, in the VFL across a couple games there. So he's got not a huge fantasy game, but it could provide some decent scoring ability. Richmond, we know how depleted their side is at the moment, so we could see the likes of Jacob Blight come in, age 22. He is a tall defender, so maybe not going to be super, what's it called, fantasy relevant, but it could be the one that could come in, I could say. He's only got a 6 month contract, so that probably says a lot about them, that they're not looking to him as a future. West Coast pick up Jack here as a forward. Do West Coast need a forward? Probably not, so not another one I'm really looking at. St Kilda picked up Max Hall. Again, are they looking at bringing in a midfielder? Probably not. They've even got Brad Crouch in the twos that are playing in there at the moment, so I don't think he has an option of coming in. Hawthorn picked up Jasper, so but I think they're pretty settled with who they're playing in at the moment. They've got Jordan Lewis, who's due back, so he probably isn't going to run. I really just wanted to sort of tick through this just to make sure that you've sort of written these names down. Maybe do a bit of research into what their scoring has been in their VFL or wherever they're playing. Just to someone, when if they do get picked up, because we have seen the likes of, a Jai Newcomb, a Durham, and who else do we have here? A Noble, and a Pickett, who have come in the preseason draft and provided some pretty decent options for us throughout the season. So it is actually nice that we have this mid-season draft, and they provide some, decent rookies for us. We've even seen the likes of Ned Long return. He has a pretty good fantasy game, so if he gets a run, I definitely wouldn't mind jumping on him. He is a bit more pricey. I think he's about 340k, so he's definitely not basement price. That's the only annoying thing. And we've seen Brian Teakle also get picked up there as well, who can play a decent role. Got picked up by North Melbourne, so whether that affects Cherry or not, possibly, wouldn't think so, but there's always a possibility. But that's all I really want to talk about. So just have a look through these names, maybe put them down in your spreadsheet, whatever you track these names, and just keep an eye on them as there is possibility that they come in. Sorry, guys. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the buy strategy. So I'm trying to rattle off a couple different scenarios here. So in my eyes, there's 3 different scenarios just for this round, particularly. So, I'll go through some scenarios here. So either you're heavy in round 12. So where I'm classifying as heavy is that you got 6 primos or plus. So let's just rattle off some of those primos again. So you got Sheasel, Whitfield, Green, Golden, Heaney, Powell, Zorko. If you have 6 or more of those, then I'd absolutely be looking to move up at least one of them. One that you're not thinking is going to be your top 6 of the line or top 8, wherever you're looking. So that will more likely be a Powell. Maybe it's a Whitfield. So maybe one of those options. And then I'd also be moving off, the rookies that are also in that line, because it's probably unlikely that you don't have a rookie in that line, where that's a Harvey Thomas, a Pink, a Durham, a Dersma, a Lazaro, or a Darcy Jones. One of those guys probably need to go, because you probably need to trying to field your 21 or 22, depending on if you have a second backup rock or not. And then, that's where I'd be focusing. Whereas if your structure's looking pretty much about right, is where I'd say you have 5 primos on the line, then I'd possibly be looking, hold your primos and then look to trade a couple of the rookies that are in the buy. So again, Harvey Thomas and the likes of those, Cadman even, Roberts if you're still holding him, and then maybe trading 1 or 2 of the future buys. So, if you have a couple of around 13 players, or you're heavy in round 14, then I'd absolutely look to trade those guys out, just to sort of level out your structure a little bit. And the final scenario is if you're light in round 12, which is probably where I consider my team at the moment. I've only got, the 6 players on the buy, and I've got 4 primos. So Whitfield, Green, Heaney, and Powell. I'll count Powell as a primo. So, and a couple rookies there. So I'm looking at holding all my buy players entirely, and I'm not looking to trade out any of these players. I'm sort of backing in that Harvey Thomas will play throughout the buys. And while he won't make much coin, or any coin realistic, he may even bleed coin, I think he can provide me some decent decent scores throughout, and hopefully isn't the sub given their injuries. So I think he is worth holding. And surprisingly, Pink is going to make some money hopefully in the next couple of weeks if he continues to play. So I don't mind him there. But if you're in a very similar situation to me, I'd definitely be looking at that, holding all these players, and then making moves forward in the next couple of weeks. So this week, I'm probably looking at obviously jumping off a Sweet, so that's a round 13 player, a Fife, so that's another round 13 player. And that just opens the possibilities for me next week, whereas I don't need to trade those players out. I can even look, to round 14 players or round 15 players. Whoever needs to go, I'm not sort of locked in, okay, this is round 13, I need to get off these Fife, Sweet, Sharp, whoever else you have in there that needs to go. Yeah, you got a bit more flexibility in terms of who you need to trade out to sort of still match and make sure you've got 21 or 22 players on field. So that's just the different scenarios where I'd be looking at, and that's just how the way I view it. There's also a couple of different strategies in terms of trading. So a lot of people have spoken about going 3 down this week, or you're going a 2 down, 1 up sort of situation, whether that's enough to get you to a primo or get you to a mid-pricer. There's just so many different ways you can look at it. So ideally you want to go 2 down, 1 up and get to an uber primo, so that 900k plus range. But a lot of the time you can't get to there because you're looking at trading out these red dot rookies that are only worth 400k, if not even less than that. And that's not enough money to get you to these other guys without going basement rookies, which we don't have a lot of. So ideally you want to get those primos, because at the end of the day, the likes of Day, Crisp, Salem probably aren't long-term picks for you, whereas if you can get to a Jordan Dawson, a Day Cost, they're guys that you're going to hold for the rest of the season. Yes, they're going to have a buy, but every player that you're going to be trading in this week is going to have a buy at some point, whether that's a rookie, a mid-pricer, or a primo. So I don't really fall into this trap of, don't trade in a primo because they're going to have a buy. Well, everyone's going to have a buy no matter who you trade in, so it doesn't really make much of a difference. The only sense I probably see that as being relevant is if you're doing 3 down. So you're going to 3 rookies, but there's also a risk in that is, you're trading in 3 rookies that there's no guarantee that they're there to play every single week. I think you've got pretty 2 decent options in McAuliffe and Fraser. Again, there's no guarantee that they'll play all 3 weeks, but I'm pretty confident they will. It's just trying to get a 3rd rookie in, which is the hard one, where that's do you go Will Parker? There's no guarantee. Sullivan, maybe. Who was the other one? Harvey Harris, maybe as well. There's so many maybes around those sort of rookies at the moment that there's risk to it. And then you bank the coin for next week, so you maybe you go into next week with a 400k in the bank or whatever it is, and then you may be looking at a double upgrade next week, and then whether you're looking at a Fisher next week or a Zorko, can you get both in at the same time? Very unlikely, but there's definitely a possibility. And also having that flexibility of having that extra cash throughout the buys also just makes your life a little bit easier, especially if you have that freedom to change up who you're trading every week. You're not sort of stuck in, okay, I need to get around 12 players, around 14 players out to get to my 22. I can trade around 15 player or whatever. I definitely don't mind that. So I'd personally probably going either get up to that primo and pay up, or probably just go 3 down and take the risk and cash up for next week and see if you can get a double upgrade next week with a couple of decent options there, whether you're going a Golden, you're going a Dunkley, you're going a Zorko, a Fisher, even McKercher you can probably throw in there if he's back as well. There's a couple of different options there, so that's where I'd be searching at. So that's probably enough scenario chat in terms of the buys. Let's quickly jump into... I guess we should do captains, eh? I guess we should do captains. Alright. So let's quickly look at the fixture. Just go through one by one of the games. Only a couple games this week. 7 games. So not a whole lot of options. And I've actually found captains pretty tough this week, to be honest. So first game of the week, Thursday night, Port Adelaide against Carlton. both are horrible matchups for each other, so I wouldn't really be looking at anyone here. Butters, I wouldn't be doing. Walsh wouldn't be doing either. Just none of them really appealing in terms of matchup. None have really scored well against each other either. So there's just no history to back up anything there. So not looking at anyone there. This game is a little bit more interesting because you got Nick Dacles, pardon me, is a decent option I think against Boston Bulldogs. He went 112 against them last year. So I don't mind him as an option. You've got Bont on the other side. He went 114, but Bont isn't in the greatest form, so I probably wouldn't be looking at him. The other option is, English, who I currently have on my side, and this is where I wanted to talk about what his possibility is. Obviously, you're looking at Collingwood, and you think, they're a tough matchup, especially if you're looking at, DFS or any sort of scale of hardness. You look at Collingwood, hard matchup. You're not touching it, right? But given that Mason Cox has gone out for 6 weeks with an injury, it's been a long time since we've seen the likes of Darcy Cameron solo rocking. So I had to do a bit more of a research on this topic because I wasn't too sure what his scoring potential without him was. So did a bit more research, and the last time we saw Darcy Cameron be a solo ruck was last year, so around 2021, 22. You look here, you got Mason Cox was out around 21 and around 22. So when I went back and looked at those two games, we had the likes of Ned Reeves. He scored a 95, and we got Reece Stanley, who scored an 80. So both of those ruckmen averaged 50 in their career. Both are very not fantasy relevant ruckmen, and both nearly put up very respectable scores. So probably 30 points above where they probably projected to be realistically. So I even went a bit deeper, went into round 12, year 2022, where we sort of saw his first year come in, especially when Brodie Grundy went down. So looking at where Mason Cox is here, he was out between round 7 and round 9. So, yeah, round 7 and I'll count round 10 as well because he got injured in this game. But round 7 and round 10, we had the likes of Witts, scored a 103 against him. So, pretty good for Witts. Witts is probably around a 90 ruckman on average. We had Nankervis. He went 118 against Darcy Cameron. We had a bit of an interesting one. We had Jordan Sweet when he was at the Bulldogs. He went 85. So, pretty decent as well. And then we had the big one where Sean Darcy went up against Darcy Cameron and he put up a 126. So, looking at all that to me screams that he is a super easy ruckman to score against. So I am actually really bullish on going English this week, and I think I'm taking that punt. I don't know how many other captaincy pickers are going to research that much into it and go back him, just given his form. So I'm backing him in this week. Probably not enough to go into my top 5, but very close in that consideration. So that's where I'm looking at. So just something to consider. I think that was something, a pretty interesting point that I did a bit of research into. Where are we up to? So yeah, that's probably all we were looking at there. All we're really looking at in this Hawthorn v Crows game is maybe a Dawson. If you have him, probably maybe not even a Crouch. Hawthorn have been a pretty tough matchup in terms of mids or even defenders. They've just been pretty restrictive in the last game, especially at home. So probably worth throwing the VC or the C. So I definitely don't mind Dawson. He's made my top 5. He's number 4 at the moment. This is probably the most fantasy relevant game here. So number 1 and number 2 in my top 5, you got Steele and Marshall. So I think Steele will go pretty big this week against West Coast Eagles. He put up an 87 against them last year, but we have seen the likes of, Crouch went 137 against the West Coast Eagles last year, so hopefully he's going to get a bit more of that distribution ball, which you saw last week. Took 10 marks, so if he can put both together, his marks and his tackles, which, again, the rule change this week is going to be quite significant, and I reckon he could get quite a few holding the balls. So I'd definitely be captaining Steele this week. And again, Marshall, I think he bounces back this week. An easier opponent. I think he just goes back to his 130 ways. He put up a 130 against them last year, so I really like him in there. Probably not looking at the defenders much as in this game, just given it's probably going to be a lot in their forward line as such, like in the Western Bulldogs forward line. Maybe. It's hard to say. A lot of people are actually tipping St Kilda to lose this game. Like, look at the favours. Like, $1.77 to $2.10. So it could be in St Kilda's defence line a little bit more, and maybe that opens up the possibility to Wangani Malira, Bonner, Sinclair, likes of those. But I'm not confident in picking those sort of guys. Probably no one really looking at in this game unless you're going Holmes. I don't mind Holmes in there. Don't really have the history behind it, but he's been killing it honestly. So he's the only one I consider. I don't think we have anyone from Richmond, and you're probably not captaining a Baker or something like that. So not looking at anything like that. In this game, you've got the likes of Oliver and Gawn. So probably not looking at Oliver as much. He probably hasn't hit the ceilings that we're looking for just yet. Gawn is the interesting one. And the interesting thing about this is it's in Alice Springs, as I mentioned. And we haven't seen huge scores there over the past few years. So it's a bit of a tighter ground. So not quite as wide. I think it's about 10 metres less wide, but a little bit longer. So don't really know how that affects in terms of scoring. Does that mean there's going to be a few more ruck contests? Possibly. I think last year average was about 80 there, so that could mean some decent points for him. We did see the likes of Darcy Cameron go up against Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson last week and put up 117, so I definitely don't mind Gawn at all as an option. And for the final game, I don't think we have anyone in this game. Maybe an Anderson, but he's very up and down. So, and it's the last one. I don't think you're trusting him with the C. Whereas you maybe have a Merritt in this game. Probably not trusting a Martin, given the unsure of his job where he's playing. He has been thrown forward a little bit often. So, but I'm also not looking at Merritt in terms of captaincy. I know he's been pretty consistent, but he's probably not going to provide that decent high-scoring ceiling that I'm really looking for. So, he hasn't made my top 5 all consideration. So, pulling up my top 5, as I mentioned, I'm going Jack Steele to absolutely kill it this week. I think it's going to be a rough watch for those that don't own him like myself. So, he is a very decent option there. Rowan Marshall, number 2. I think he bounces back this week and goes 130 plus. Max Gawn at number 3. I think he, puts up a 130 quite easily against those two. Just continues his great form from last week as long as his calf doesn't give him too many issues. Jordan Dawson against the Hawks. I think he's just going to, do what he does and put up some decent scores. I don't think he drops below 110. And then Caleb Sarong, I reckon he goes nuts and puts up a 120 as well against... who are they playing? They're playing Melbourne. So I think that's a very good option. So that's my top 5. Hopefully that comes true. My top 5 haven't been great. And a lot of them I don't have on my side. I only have Max on. So that's just kind of shows where my team's at. But I think that sort of does it for the captains. I think we'll just quickly go through some questions and then we'll finish off today. We've already gone for an hour, so quickly go through this handful of questions. So we've got SB has asked, do I go Luke Ryan or do I go Caleb Strong? And who goes first out of McRae and Powell? So interesting question for me. Look at your buys firstly is my main question. So if you've already got a Hayden Young, maybe don't look at it, Luke Ryan. If you've already got a Butters, then... So the way I'm trying to describe that is that if you have, looking at your line, so if you've got Hayden Young in your back line, maybe go Sarong. If you already have a Zach Butters in the midfield, then maybe go Luke Ryan. So if you already have both of those guys and you're just bringing in an extra guy in that line, I'd probably go Sarong. I think he's going to be a bit more consistent, and obviously you want midfielders, so I think that's probably a bit of a better play. I think he puts a bigger score this week, and he is cheaper as well, so I'd probably go Sarong there. And who goes out of McRae and Powell? It's tough. It's very tough. Both are priced very similar. McRae's a little bit more expensive, higher break even. I'd probably go McRae. I think McRae goes first. Power's not going to drop much more in coin from here on out. He's got the buy this week, but again, look at your buys. If you're heavy, trade out Power. If you're not, then maybe go McRae if it gets up to the player. Power Prawn Stars said it all went shit this week. I feel you there, mate. I feel you there. It's not been the year for me specifically, but I know a lot of other coaches out there are struggling. So keep your head up. Keep playing. This is the most exciting part of the year, and hopefully you can make some moves and come home strong. Power Prawn Star also followed up with triple rookie switch time. It's going to be a hard week. 7 primos on the buy. So that's probably a good scenario for me to describe. Again, you're heavy on your buys, so maybe look to trade out one of your primos, I would say. You want to at least try and get down to 6 primos, or even 5 if you can. So if you have a Power, maybe move him on. If you're banking on, I don't know who else you'd have. Maybe you have a... I'd say you probably have the likes of Sheezer, Whitfield, Green, Goulden, Heaney, Powell, and Zorko, so maybe that's your 7. I'd definitely be moving off a Power at a minimum, just so you've got not 3 primos on the buy, and then possibly looking at a couple others, maybe do 2 rookie downgrades around that as well. So that's where I'd be looking there. We got JAFL MTB asked, I'm thinking of trading closely to one of Day, Clark, Merritt, Sarong, Crisp, Walsh. Who would you take? So big list of players there, so different price range as well. So you got Day, Clark, Crisp, all in that sort of mid-price range where you've got Merritt, Sarong, and Walsh. I'd say if you have the option to go up to the top guys, I'd definitely be looking at them. So I'll rank them in terms of I'll rank them differently. So I'll put Day, Clark, and Crisp in one category, and I'll put Merritt, Sarong, and Walsh in different categories. So if I had the option of going up to the top line, I'd go Sarong, Walsh, and Merritt. I think I'd go that. I'd go that. It's tight between Walsh and Merritt. I think I just like Walsh's. Both runs are really good. Both runs are very good. So looking here, oh god. So Colton have that quite a good run, whereas Essendon have very, very, very similar. Maybe I just like, I think tough. I'll just say they're very, very even. Maybe I'll stick with Walsh first and then Merritt after that. So I'll definitely be picking up Sarong first, even though his run isn't the best out of those ones. I think he just helps through the buys, and he's still going to be pretty consistent throughout the year. So I think I'd put him first. And then ranking Day, Clark, and Crisp, I'd probably go Day, Crisp, and then Clark. I'm just not a huge fan of paying up for Clark. I think he's probably 50 to 100k more expensive than the likes of Day and Crisp. I think Crisp is like 780k and Day's like 740. So you nearly 100k difference between them. Again, Day has just has midfield status, whereas if you want to pick up a defender, it's a little bit different. But I'd still probably go Crisp and Day before Clark. A couple more here. We've got Jim has asked thoughts on Graham, Howes, and Sweet to Marshall, McAuliffe, and Fraser. Perfect trade. I absolutely think that's amazing, especially because you all look like you've got Sweet as your R2. So I'd absolutely be doing that. That is some great trading. Definitely, just to elaborate on that a little bit more, McAuliffe and Fraser, I think, are 2 must-have rookies this week. I think they are great options. Last question I've got here is from Kate. Would you trade a Closey Powell if it gets you to a Ryan, Dawson, Walsh, any primo as such, over a Garcia who gets me to a Day Oliver? I'm heavy on round 15 though, which is the only downside today. Okay, so a bit to unpack there. So you're either looking to trade out Closey or Powell or Garcia. So obviously Garcia is a red dot, whereas Closey and Powell, Closey's playing and Powell's on the buy. You said you're heavy on the round 15, and it depends if you get to a day or an Oliver. What do we think of Oliver? Is he still a decent pick? He's still at 750k, break even of 80. What's his run like? Tougher run up to the bye, and then yeah, pretty tough overall, honestly. Bit tough one. So I'd probably, if you can still field 22 this week, I have absolutely no problem with holding Garcia this week. Again, you could still trade him out next week because we do have a bit of free hit next week, assuming that most people will have pretty strong teams with not having too many primos or even rookies. So if you can get your 21, 22 this week and still hold Garcia, I'm all for that. So maybe trade out the likes of Power closely, whatever helps your buy structure a bit more. Again, if you need to trade Power, I'd only trade him out if you are heavy in round 12. But if you're not, then I'd trade closely, go into a day early, and then get up to that top line guy. And then like I said before, how do I rank them? I'd probably go Dawson, Walsh, Ryan out of those primos. I did have Sarong up above them all, so something to consider. Maybe not Sarong. I don't know. It's tough. It's very tough. I think all are very good options. At the end of the day, you're picking up, a top of the line guy either way. So I think that's where to go. Yeah, I'd probably just be passing on Day and Oliver, especially just trying to avoid round 15 because you're already heavy there. So don't go Dawson then. Walsh is round 14, Ryan's round 13. So I'd probably be targeting one of those two. So Dawson's probably on the lower end of that list, actually, for your Pacific team. I think that sort of does it for today. I'll quickly go through what my trades are going to be. So you can see what trade I've already done here. I've already gone John Sweet to McAuliffe. That's already locked in, and I don't see that changing. The next thing I'm looking at doing is going, so it's either going to be Fife out. I think he just one needs to go. And then it's either going to be a Garcia that goes. Hopefully it's going to let me do it. I want to pick up, where is he? A Nick Dacos finally jumping on the train after a few shocking weeks. And then I might go Parker. Hopefully that sort of makes it work. Obviously it's not eligible right now because Garcia is in my forward line, I think. So I'd have to change that out. So that's one option I'm looking at. That works, obviously. I can make that work with DDP. Or I may need a bit more money because obviously I only have 240k with this. I can't actually get to any decent players. So if I go players I can afford, none of these players are probably going to play. I do like Will Parker if he can play 4 games. Just whether that happens or not. Or I trade out another red dot in a house that gives me 330k. And then I can go the likes of, I don't want a defender. I don't know why that was selected on defender. I can go a Harvey Harris or a McEntee or any rookie that I'm really looking at there. So I don't mind that. So that's my different options. I may go Harvey Harris in the end of the day. So a couple of different options there. I think these are pretty much locked in. Like I can't do anything with what's him coming out. So I just prefer going to a day cost rather than a day. Just locking him in. I think he's going to be pretty good for the rest of the season. So that's sort of what I'm looking at. I think it's time for 5 to go anyway. So at the end of the day, it's trading out 2 red dots and a very poor mid pricer and getting a top line guy and 2 very good rookies. So hopefully, in hindsight, it's going to be a very good trade in the end. So that's how I'm looking at this point in time. It's just waiting for the likes of tomorrow night, realistically. All right. That will be it for today, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's episode. Please leave a like and subscribe. Still on the road to 750 subscribers. I think we're up to 670, so we're getting there. Yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed, and drop any questions you have down below. I'll try and answer them all by Friday night's teams are announced. I am driving to Melbourne for this weekend, so I may not be as active on the likes of in my comment section at all. So I'm on an 8 hour drive from Adelaide to Melbourne tomorrow, early hours. So yeah, hopefully your fantasy goes well this week, and hopefully the buys are nice to you. So I'll catch you guys all tomorrow. Next week. Sorry. Enjoy, guys. Bye.